بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين إنه خير ناصر ومعين ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت ببنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين. Everyone together. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذرية الحسين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الإمام زين العابدين علي بن الحسين عليه السلام: في دعائه أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآله وبلغ بإيماني أكمل الإيمان واجعل يقيني أفضل اليقين وانتهي بنيتي إلى أحسن النيات وبعملي إلى أحسن الأعمال. Dear brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Inshallah, in these few nights that we are together, in these few nights of Muharram, where we commemorate the martyrdom of our Imam Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, inshallah, our discussion will revolve around how we can recreate and transform ourselves and acquire those virtues that the Ahlul Bayt have taught us and become one of those who the Ahlul Bayt want us to become, of those people with those characteristics that are worthy of the followers of the Ahlul Bayt. And to do this, inshallah, we'll be discussing the dua, this 20th dua of Sahifa as-Sajjadiyya, this book of du'as from our 4th Imam, Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. Which is dedicated to the Makarim al-Akhlaq. It's the dua of Makarim al-Akhlaq. It's the 20th dua within the regular order of Sahifa as-Sajjadiyya. And we began last night with the first line of this dua. We said that the Imam begins asking Allah, praying to Allah with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So the Imam asks Allah to give us the akhlaq through this prayer upon the Prophet and his family. And we talked about how it is not just a placeholder. In fact, throughout this entire dua and in many of the other du'as of Imam Zain al-Abidin, we see that the Imam repeats this prayer upon the Prophet and his family. But this is not just a placeholder. What the Imam is trying to teach us is that if we want to transform ourselves, to recreate ourselves, we have to look at the family of the Prophet. And we have to grasp on to the family of the Prophet through their words, through their deeds, and finally through their love and their presence in our lives. The second line that Imam Zain al-Abidin continues his dua, he says, وَبَلِّغْ بِإِيمَانِ أَكْمَلَ الْإِيمَانِ. Again, just as a reminder, this is a dua for virtues, for akhlaq. And we said that akhlaq isn't just the adab that we have, the sort of the actions and the af'al, the sort of acts that we do. Right? Usually when we think of akhlaq, we think of certain traditions that we have. For example, we try to be respectful and we try to not get too angry and so on and so forth. Right? These are certain actions that we commit. But he said that akhlaq is something much deeper than that. Akhlaq is not just our actions, but it is our very nature. If we want to become of those great followers of the Ahlul Bayt, we have to transform our very nature. And what the Imam is saying to us in this second line of Sahifa as-Sajjadiyah is that first, if you want to transform yourself, first look at your iman. Our goal is to become good and true human beings. The Imam begins with iman. Now, it's a question for many of us, particularly in this society, but in other societies as well. If our goal, if our ultimate endeavor in life is to become a good person, what does iman and belief have to do with it? After all, when we interact with other people in our society, we find a lot of good people in a lot of different places with a lot of different beliefs. We find good Christians, we find good Jewish people, we find even good secular and atheist people. People who have no belief in Allah or any of the other things that Islam teaches us. Right? So the question is posed, what does iman in Allah, in His Prophet, in the final day, in the day of judgment, and so on and so forth, what does this have to do with akhlaq? Can I not be a good person? Can I be a good person and not be a Muslim? Or not be a mu'min and not believe in the imams? Or in all of the other teachings that Islam brings us? Is it possible? So maybe sometimes this question enters into our mind because we interact with sincere and good people in our lives, right? At our work, at our schools. I mean, these, we don't have to cover over the goodness that we see in others. We can't deny that goodness. Allah presents His blessings to different people and to different tribes, and in fact, Allah talks about this in His Quran. He says, you have to look at the different peoples and the different tribes, and you have to learn from those different people and those different tribes, because Allah is not stingy. He presents His blessings and His mercy and His compassion to different people. It's not that as though Allah refrains His blessings from, say for example, Christians or Jews, or for example, people who don't even have a belief. Allah presents His blessings to all of humankind. And one of His blessings are these akhlaq. One of these blessings is trustworthiness, is honesty, this sense of charity and compassion towards the creatures of Allah. So then the question still remains. If we are going to be true to ourselves, we have to ask and answer this question. What does iman have to do with akhlaq? The Imam begins with iman. He says, وَبَلِّغْ بِإِيمَانِ أَكْمَلَ الْإِيمَانِ. He says, take my iman to that highest and utmost level. If we want to understand what the Imam is trying to teach us, we have to go back to the Quran. Allah describes goodness. Allah describes truth. First and foremost with belief. In Surah Al-Baqarah, in the first part of Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah talks about different peoples. It's almost as though it's an anthropology of God. He says, for example, Allah begins with the muttaqin. Beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah separates humankind into three groups. He says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. Begins with the muttaqin. And he says in the very beginning, those who believe, يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. So Allah, in this section of the Quran, He's saying, if you want to become one of those who are virtuous, let me explain them for you. Those who are virtuous and those who are pious, they are believing. And then they act on that belief. And then whatever resources and blessings that we give them, they share and spread those resources and blessings. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. The second group that Allah talks about are the mushrikeen, are the kuffar. Those who reject Allah and reject His Prophet and reject all of those other blessings that Allah gives them. And Allah explains who these people are. They are explicitly and even on a superficial level, they are rejecting Allah's command. The kuffar, the mushrikeen. And thinking about the Prophet's time, these people were very obvious. Those who were fighting and raising arms and going into battle with the Prophet. The mushrikeen of Mecca and the rest of the Arabian Peninsula. So the mushrikeen, the mu'mineen, and then there's a third group, the munafiqeen. And what's interesting is that the munafiqeen, Allah, almost as though He describes them as worse than that second group. These munafiqeen, they express iman. They state that they have iman and they believe in the Prophet. And yet when they are in the comfort and the safety of their own homes, when they are amongst themselves, they express their true beliefs. Right? The munafiqeen. These people do not take up swords and arms against the Prophet. They do not fight explicitly against the Prophet. And yet they do not believe. What's interesting is that in the next ayah, Allah describes these munafiqeen. What's interesting about the Quran is that Allah will present to us a category of people. He will give, for example, muttaqeen, and then He will describe them. He will say, for example, the kuffar, and then He will give some attributes of those people. Allah talks about the munafiqeen, and then He gives attributes about them. He says, why don't you believe as the believers do? And they say, what? We should believe as these people who are, maybe we can say, not as smart as us, as-sufaha. We should believe as these people. There's one ayah though of the Quran, of this Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah describes the actions of these munafiqeen. He says, these munafiqeen, when it is told to them, لا تفسدوا في الأرض, don't cause corruption in the land. They say, rather, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ. When it is said to them, don't cause corruption in the land, they say, rather we are those who do good. And we are those who cause goodness in the land. What's interesting is that in the tafasir we learn that what these people are saying is that they are trying to bring together society. Imagine you were alive during the Prophet's time in Medina, and a lot of the munafiqeen were present in Medina. And you are in a society filled with Muslims and filled with people who believe. And for example, you have a person who is a munafiq and he doesn't believe in Islam. Now, in such a society, if this person were to explicitly express his beliefs, what would happen? A lot of difficulty and a lot of trials and a lot of sort of antagonism would be caused in society. Whether it is within that person's family, or within that person's friends and companions, or within larger society. What the munafiqeen are saying is that yes, it's true that we don't believe, but what we are trying to do in society is to say that despite our belief, we're still going to try to do good. Despite our lack of belief in the Prophet, we're still going to try to bring society together and not cause corruption in the land. So these people don't believe, they don't have iman, and yet in their own view and in their own perception, they are doing good. And if we were to look at that action, maybe we would think that that's good too. In the end of the day, do you want strife and discord in society? Or do you want a society that is united? A society that lives and breathes together? Do you want chaos in society, or do you want peace in society? Which one would you rather have? So it seems like the munafiqeen actually are doing good. And then Allah continues. He says, again, not only are these people rejected by the mu'mineen, they are also rejected by the mushrikeen. Because what these people do is they break apart society by destroying that trust and not being able to, not having any sort of trust. Are you in my camp or in the other camp? And then Allah presents a parable. He says, مثلهم كمثل الذي استوقد نارا فلما أضاءت ما حوله ذهب الله بنورهم وتركهم في ظلمات لا يبصرون. Allah says, their example, what these munafiqeen are in fact doing, and their reality is that Allah will, it is almost like these people are a people who have a fire, right? They kindle a fire, and then the world opens up to them. They see the world. And then all of a sudden, just like that, Allah extinguishes that fire. He takes away their source of sight and their abilities to see. Allah presents them with the blessings of guidance, and then because of their rejection, Allah takes it away from them. What we can understand from this ayah is that without iman, regardless of how much good we do, if we do not believe in a source of goodness, if we do not believe in a source of truth and justice, which is Allah, and if we don't have the means by which we can determine what is good and what is evil, what is just and what is unjust, then however much good we do in society, that good is going to be unstable. A person might think that the good that they're doing in society is really good, but how do they know? If they don't believe in Allah, that source of goodness and justice, then where do they get their sense of goodness from? Where do they get their sense of justice from? I might do something that I think is truly good, that is truly just. You might do something that you think is truly just. And then when these two things come together, we have chaos. Right? The munafiqeen were doing something that they thought was truly just and good. What Allah is saying is that because you don't have that groundwork, that foundation upon which you build your virtues and your goodness, then all of those actions that you do are fruitless. In the end of the day, all of those good actions that we do, if we don't have this basis in iman, this belief in Allah and His Prophet, all of the good actions that we do are totally baseless and foundationless. And so we have to begin at a deeper source. Don't just be superficial human beings, thinking about, for example, how much charity that I can give in society. Start with something deeper. Start with that goodness that you can create by accessing the truth about Allah and His creation. Only until we do that, we access that source of goodness in the world, in Allah's creation, then and only then. Only when we attest to Allah as that source of goodness, then and only then we can build up a foundation of goodness and virtue. Without that, our house will fall apart. Our society will fall apart. صلوا على محمد وآله.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل.
And what is profound about Imam Zain al-Abidin's dua is that he says, وَبَلِّغْ بِإِيمَانِ أَكْمَلَ الْإِيمَانِ. So don't think about Iman as just a tick mark that we can just mark off. Don't think about Iman as some sort of identity. I am Muslim, I am Mu'min, and therefore I am good. I am in the good graces of Allah. Again, we're trying to get deeper and deeper into Allah's creation. Understand how Allah has created this world. What the Imam is saying is that just because you're Shia, or just because you're a follower of the Ahlul Bayt, or just because you're Muslim and you follow the commandments of the Prophet, don't think that that's the only level. وَبَلِّغْ بِإِيمَانِ أَكْمَلَ الْإِيمَانِ. However much we think we believe, there is always more to understand and believe in the message of the Prophet. وَاجْعَلْ يَقِينِي أَفْضَلَ الْيَقِينِ. Later on in the dua, the Imam talks about hubris. He talks about humility and the lack of humility. Inshallah, we will get to those moments in the dua. But the Imam, in this section of the dua, he says, وَاجْعَلْ يَقِينِي أَفْضَلَ الْيَقِينِ. We want to have an iman that is ever growing, that is continuously deepening within our souls. Iman, according to the Quran, is a light that Allah places within the hearts of the believers. In that same Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah, He describes for us later on in Surah Al-Baqarah, in one of the ayats that we usually recite with Ayatul Kursi. Right? Everybody is familiar with Ayatul Kursi. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. Right? And then there's 3 ayats that are coming one after another. All of these 3 ayats, according to the traditions of the Ahlul Bayt, are part of Ayatul Kursi. The 3rd ayah of this series, Allah says, Allahu waliyul ladina amanu yukhrijuhum min al-dhulumati ila an-nur. Allah is the wali, that guardian and that master, that authority over the mu'mineen. يُخْرِجُونَهُمْ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. He takes them from darkness and He enters them into light. According to some of our tafasir, this ayah is when it's talking about iman, when it's talking about light, it's talking about iman. So if we can think about iman as a light that Allah places within our hearts, then that light can begin as a small speck, as a small candle, and then it can grow. And it can grow and grow and grow until we get to the point of yaqeen, this certainty. As we are familiar with in other parts of the Quran, Allah talks about the different levels of certainty. Right? Alhaakum al-takathur. In this ayah, in this surah, Allah talks about ilm al-yaqeen and then ayn al-yaqeen. There are different levels, not just of iman, but even different levels of yaqeen. Now, I'll just spend a few moments here because I am running out of time. Just spend a few moments here talking about what exactly yaqeen is. Yaqeen is that level of certainty which gives us a certain tranquility in our heart. It's when we are faced with some sort of knowledge that we have. Sometimes when we, say for example, know something, we know Allah. Sometimes when we're posed with a question, that knowledge that we have about Allah, it falters. It's a little bit shaky. When we are posed with a question or a doubt in our mind, sometimes our certainty becomes a little bit uncertain. This is ilm al-yaqeen, when you have certainty and yet that certainty is based on maybe some reasoning, some arguments. And so you would have to think about your certainty. You'd have to through your reasoning and your knowledge, you have to come to a certain level of certainty. Maybe through your study and so on. And then there's the level of Ainul Yaqeen. In a beautiful hadith from the Prophet of Islam, Rasulullah Muhammad al-Mustafa, the Prophet, in this story, it describes for us what Ainul Yaqeen is all about. It is said that the Prophet one day after Salatul Subh, after the morning prayer, he sees a youth in the congregation. And he sees that this youth is a little bit different. Think about what the presence of the Prophet causes in the souls of those Muslims who were alive during the Prophet's time. This youth, this young man, it's said that when the Prophet sees him, his complexion had changed. He had become yellow. And it's said that this young man would almost like, be hitting himself. He was in such a state of anguish that the Prophet looks to this young man and he says, "How are you doing? What's going on? How have you spent the night? Ma asbahta. How have you spent the night?" And this young man, he responds, "Asbahtu ya Rasulullah muqinan." "Oh Rasulullah, I woke up today with a level of certainty that I have never had and I've never felt before. I am in a state of utter certainty." And what's interesting is that this hadith, it says, the Prophet is surprised. And he says, "What do you mean?" قال رسول الله إن لكل يقين حقيقة فما حقيقة يقينك. For every certainty there is some sort of reality, some sort of signs and symptoms. For every illness you have some symptoms. Right? For every goodness you have some symptoms. What are the symptoms that you see? And so this young man, he begins to describe. He says to the Prophet, "Ya Nabi Allah, it is almost as though I see Allah and Allah's arsh, Allah's heavens opening up for me. I can see into the reality of existence. And it is almost as though I can see the gardens of paradise and those who are enjoying those best blessings and benefits of God. And it is almost as though I see the hellfire and those who are burning within. And those guardians of the hellfire, and as they are bringing these people and throwing them into the hellfire, I can see this. I have reached this level of yaqeen." And then Rasulullah says, "هذا عبد نور الله قلبه بالإيمان." The response of the Prophet is not rejection, is not to say that, God forbid, you are hallucinating, or for the Prophet to say, "Okay, take it easy," right? The response of the Prophet is to say that this is a young man, this is a servant of Allah for whom Allah has enlightened and illuminated his heart with iman, with true and utter belief. ثم قال له إلزم ما أنت عليه. Stick to that which you are given. And then this young man says, "O Prophet, of course, I will. But O Prophet, this is such a difficult burden for me. That, O Prophet, please do dua that I can become a shaheed and a martyr in your path. Because this is too much for me to bear. This level of yaqeen that I have, this insight into Allah's creation that I have, it's too much for me to bear." And so what the Prophet does is that he prays for this young man, and then in one of those upcoming battles that the Prophet had, this young man takes part in that battle, and he reaches that level of shahada. This is what yaqeen is all about. And this is one of those levels of yaqeen that the Imam prays for. O Allah, وَبَلِّغْ بِإِيمَانِي أَكْمَلَ الْإِيمَانِ وَاجْعَلْ يَقِينِي أَفْضَلَ الْيَقِينِ. So we are starting to begin our journey. We start with Iman, then we go to Yaqeen, and then the Imam says, وَانْتَهِي بِنِيَّتِي إِلَىٰ أَحْسَنِ النِّيَّاتِ وَبِعَمَلِي إِلَىٰ أَحْسَنِ الْأَعْمَالِ. And take my niyyah, take my intentions that I have, and take them to those highest of intentions. Unfortunately, I'm out of time at this moment, but if we are thinking about yaqeen, and if we're thinking about iman as that source from which all of our other actions are produced, then our niyyah becomes in line with all of those other beliefs. If we think about our actions as being sourced in our niyyah, and our niyyah being sourced within our iman and our yaqeen, then and only then we can begin on that process of improving and correcting our actions. The Imam ends وَبِعَمَلِي إِلَىٰ أَحْسَنِ الْأَعْمَالِ. The Imam ends with a'mal. So first there's the level of iman, then the level of yaqeen, then we have to correct our niyyah, and then our a'mal. It is the third night of Muharram. It is a night where we dedicate our thoughts towards those companions and those family members of Abu Abdullah. Let's think about this level of yaqeen wherein a person comes to that insight into Allah's creation. One of those beautiful reminders that we have of the story of Karbala is of Hur, where Hur, it is said, is the general who stops Imam Hussein in his path. Hur is the one who first meets Imam Hussein. And Hur is the one who Imam Hussein gives him to drink when he is thirsty. When Hur gets to the battlefield, gets to Karbala, Hur and his army were parched. They were so thirsty that the Imam himself and his companions bring water for Hur and his army. And it is said that the Imam himself, with his own hands, feeds and gives Hur water to drink. And it is said that on the day of Ashura, Hur did not realize what was about to take place. Hur, up to this point on the day of Ashura, he knows who Imam Hussein was. Hur, in the end of the day, was one of those Kufans who had interacted with the father of Imam Hussein, with Amir al-Mu'mineen. He was one of the greatest generals of Kufa. And so on the day of Ashura, Hur looks to Umar ibn Sa'd and he says, Umar ibn Sa'd, the events have changed. When I first came to this land, I did not expect a battle to ensue. I did not expect you to prepare yourself to fight against the grandson of the Prophet, the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And yet it seems as though you are going to fight him. You are really going to take part in this battle. You are going to start a battle in which Hur was not afraid of war. He knows what happens in war. You are going to take part in a battle in which heads will fly. And Umar ibn Sa'd, he says, yes, of course, Hur, what did you think we were doing here? And so Hur, all of a sudden, he comes to his senses. He realizes what is happening. And it is reported that Hur begins to walk back and forth, paces through the tent. And it is said that Umar ibn Sa'd looks at Hur and he says, Ya Hur, this is not what I expect from you. What are you doing? It is almost as though you are afraid of battle. And Hur responds and he says, إني أخير نفسي بين النار والجنة. I see myself between the hellfire and paradise. I see myself in this state and I have to make this decision. And Hur realizes what is about to occur against the son of the Amirul Mu'mineen, the grandson of the Prophet. And so Hur exits from the tent and he goes towards his family. Hur, it is said, had brought his own son. And he is trying to figure out what he should do. And Hur finally decides that he must go towards Imam Hussein and he must ask for forgiveness from Imam Hussein. Let us imagine what must be going through Hur's heart. This man who knows that he is the cause for Imam Hussein's ultimate death. He is the one who is going to cause so much tragedy to befall Imam Hussein. And so he is now walking towards the camp of Imam Hussein. It has been 3 days where the water has been taken away from the camp of Imam Hussein. 3 days, and Hur must be hearing the cries of the infant, the cries of the children. Hur must hear Ruqayya and all of the children crying out to their uncle, "Oh uncle, can you bring us just a little bit of water? Oh uncle, our tongues. Oh uncle, our throats. Oh uncle, we haven't had anything to drink." He must be hearing the sounds of the children calling to their father, calling to Imam Hussein. "Oh father, what are these people doing? Do they not know who you are?" And Hur is walking towards the camp. What must be going through Hur's heart? With his head hung low and his sword cast down, Hur comes towards the Imam as though a slave is going towards his master. And Hur asks the Imam. The Imam asks him, "What are you doing here, Hur?" Hur responds, "At-tawbatu ila Allahi wa ilayk." "Oh my master, I know I am the one who has caused you this anguish. And yet, oh my master, is there any sort of forgiveness for a person like me? Oh my master, is there any sort of mercy for a person like me?" And Imam Hussein, that compassionate of the Ahlul Bayt, he responds, "Of course, Hur. Enter into the camp. You are one of us. Welcome back. Welcome home, Ya Hur." And yet Hur says, "No, Ya Imam, I hear those cries. I cannot face the children. I cannot face Zainab. I know that they probably think that I am that person who has caused you this anguish, and so I cannot face them. Ya Imam Hussein, allow me the privilege of being the first to die for you and to spill my blood for you." And so Imam Hussein allows him and he accepts him and he goes off into battle. But before Hur goes off into battle, he sends his son. It is reported that Hur sees his son fighting valiantly. And after a while, when the enemy surround his son, he falls to the ground, and it is said that Hur flies towards his son and he runs and he takes his son in his arms. But before he can do that, he sees Imam Hussein is by his son's side. But with all of the sadness that Hur feels, we must ask Hur, "Ya Hur, you at least were able to take your son in your arms. But what about after Ashura? What about that daughter of Imam Hussein? Now it is no more the father taking his child into his arms, but it is the daughter taking her father into her arms." Ruqayya, it is said, in that prison, in that dungeon in Sham, it is said that Ruqayya takes her father's head into her arms. This young daughter, a daughter has only so much love for her father that she cannot bear to see her father in anguish. It is narrated that when Lady Fatima saw her father on his deathbed, and when the Prophet of Allah had passed away, Lady Fatima asks Imam Ali for the shirt of the Prophet. And when she takes this shirt of the Prophet in her arms and she places it on her face, it is said that Lady Fatima faints and passes out. She loved her father so much and so dearly. A daughter loves her father and can bear only so much difficulty when her father faces. And yet, the daughter of Imam Hussein, it is said that when she takes her father's head into her arms, it is said that Lady Ruqayya, when she takes her father's head into her arms, she says, Ya laytani, Ya laytani, kuntu a'ma wa lam ara ra'saka hakadha. Oh my father, would that I were blind. Would that I could not see your head in such a state. And it is said that the people who were surrounding her, the people who were there, would hear her cries, and then all of a sudden there was silence. And then it is reported that all of a sudden when they looked at the scene, they saw the head was in one place and her body was in another. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنقَلَبٍ يَنقَلِبُونَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ.
Ya Hussein.